So it seems like I'm always giving everybody a hard time about having too much power. You don't need to make this much power. Simple setups are awesome. You just don't need it, right? Today we're gonna argue that point. We're gonna talk about why it's a good thing to have horsepower. Now there is something to be said about a nice driver, right? Something that doesn't buck and snatch and, you know, break your neck in the neighborhood or in a parking lot when you're trying to ease out. There's something nice about that subtle, almost factory type feel. I love them, but I haven't mentioned this enough. I also love horsepower. Back when these cars were new, they made 200, 225, something like that, depending on the year, but they felt fast. There was a reason why these cars were so popular. It's because, hell, they were quick cars for back in the day. Now, we scoff at that horsepower rating now, and we think, oh, that's nothing, man. That was weak sauce. You got to remember, back then, there just wasn't the high horsepower cars that we have today. There's so many of us out there in the world that still like horsepower. They like that rowdy car, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. So why is that important? Well, because that's the essence of hot rodding. That's what these cars were essentially built to do. Now, I don't know if Ford knew that whenever they built them, but that's what they've become, and that's why we love them. So, you know, a good modified car, hell, there's nothing wrong with that, right? The combination in this car is very, very potent. I'm not super keen on the drivetrain with the spool in the back, but besides that, this little motor right here is a screamer, and it makes really, really good horsepower. Now, none of my cars have been dynoed, so I can't really give you guys an exact number, but I can tell you that this is a 347 dart block, probably around 10 to 1 compression, 9.5 to 1 compression, if I had to guess. So trick flow 11R heads, comp cams XE 274HR camshaft, 70mm turbo. This thing makes some steam. So yeah, having horsepower, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you're doing it the right way, that's all. Now, with that being said, let's go over here and talk about the Carbon Fox. This is probably the setup I would recommend for you guys that like an automatic transmission, but you're looking for some power, but you still want that street ability. Here you go. 1968 302 block, Canfield 192cc heads, Vortec T-trim with an Anderson N51 HR camshaft. Now this car is also sporting an AOD with 4R70W internals with 410 gears out back. Now this is a wicked little combination. At this point, it's probably around 500 horsepower. I don't know, if I had to guess, right? Somewhere around 500 horsepower on 12 to 15 pounds of boost. I mean, it runs. This is a fun ass car. When you get in this car, you know you got something sitting under you, right? So what happens when you run up next to a Hellcat or a new Camaro or a new Mustang? What are you gonna do, right? You got all this sound, all these looks. You want the car to be potent. And this is a very, very good combination if you want something like that. So having horsepower in these cars is freaking fun. There's so many upgrades that we can do to these things. Now, one of the questions that always gets brought up, what about the brakes? What about these 4 lugs and rear drum brakes? What about that? Guys, they're fine. For most of us, it's not a necessity. Now, people are gonna say, well, when you're going faster, you need to stop better. That's true. But here's a quick little deal you can do right now. These are just a slotted and cross-drilled rotor. I got them from LMR, and a set of Hawk brake pads. This thing has been bled out really good. The brakes work awesome. Factory style drum brakes, they've just been rebuilt. I'm gonna be honest with you, thing stops on a dime. So with the extra horsepower that this car makes, and you know, this thing will get up to 100, 120 mile an hour before you can bat your eye, and you need to be able to stop it. That's a good upgrade, and it works. Also, there are tons of safety upgrades for your car. Now, my car does not have a cage or anything like that, but they make cages for these things. They got bolt-in cages, weld-in cages. They've got everything for these cars that you could possibly want to keep yourself safe. It's not like you're throwing a 600 horsepower motor in a Mazda Miata, right? I mean, these cars have been around long enough now to where all the parts are out there for you if you do want to throw some power at it. So don't let anybody talk you out of making power. It's fine. Just make sure that you know what you're doing when you do it. And as far as combinations go, the sky is the limit. There are so many combinations out there. You can run the 302, you can run a Coyote, you can run the 351, LS swap it if that's what you want to do, Hellcat swaps, Viper swaps. I've seen it all. Any combination can go into this thing. Now you might say to yourself, well, that'll go into any car with enough fabrication. Correct. But here's the thing. There are so many people that have already done what it is that you're looking to do. You can go to forums, you can go to Facebook. There are write-ups. Somebody has done whatever it is that you want to do to your Fox body. And that's what's so awesome about these cars. So we talked a little bit about suspension earlier, but here's the thing. These cars in stock form can hold a pretty large tire. Now, if you look underneath this car right here, it's got 275s on a 10-inch wheel, and the only thing that we had to do was roll the fenders. That's it. Also, I removed the quad shocks. That's something you can do in, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour, right? And you can put a really big tire under this car. Mainly it's for looks for me. I mean, you can hook this car on a narrower tire like a slick or something, but tires and wheels, you can get a lot of different sizes under these things. Now let's use a 65 as an example. So on the other side of things, this is my 65 fastback. Now look at these little pizza cutters. You can't go much wider on this car. You can only go up to, even with the wheel tub, you can squeeze a 10-inch wide wheel in here, but you gotta have the correct offset or else it just won't fit at all. So even with the mini tubs in this car, they still recommend an 8-inch wheel. As you can see, we have mini tubbed this car. So here's a good example of a car that doesn't take too well to modifications. A 351 Windsor and a 65-66 is a very tight fit. They really don't want to go in these cars. I'm going to be honest with you. Can you make it work? Yeah, I don't want to make it work. So you're pretty much stuck with your 8.2 deck stuff, right? Your small block 302 type 289 stuff. You start throwing a lot of power at this car, and in stock form, it's just not built for it. You're going to break drive shafts, you're going to break rear ends. The old 4-speed transmission just wouldn't hold up to it. Go back over here to this car, and in stock form, minus the torque boxes and a few little things, you can throw power at these things and they're fine. The drive shafts usually hold up, the rear ends hold up pretty good. I know people are going to want to argue with me, but even the T5 transmission, if you handle it with care, that T5 transmission will actually hold up to a lot of power, unless you're just out there abusing it, trying to break it. You can do that, I guess. So the Retro Fox is the stock bottom end car with a set of SVE aluminum heads, B303 cam, and an S-trim supercharger. That's it. That's all this car's got done, with a set of, what gears we got in this thing? I don't even remember. With a set of 373 gears. Listen to me. This is a fun car. This is the car that I think most people think of when you think of a modified, fun daily driver. This is it. This is great. You don't have to worry about this thing being too radical, but it makes some good power. This car is probably getting close to the 500 mark as well, and it just runs so good. Now, my point here is this car is bone stock. It has zero suspension done to it at all. Bone stock T5, and we have beat the ever-loving shit out of this car on drag radials, guys. On drag radials. So, as you can see, just a very simple setup. Old Hartman intake, stock lower. Love this setup. I would replicate this one 100 times over. So that's cool and all, but some of you want to make some big horsepower, and this is not big horsepower in today's world. Some of y'all are wanting to make 800 and 1,000 plus horsepower. Now, I can't speak a lot on that because I've never built a car with that much power, but what I can tell you from experience is that I have seen many people do it, and everything that you're going to need to make that car as safe as possible is there for you. Your cages, your suspension, everything. Tubular front ends for these cars, I forgot to mention that, is nothing. That's not a big deal. If you've got a welder and you've got a grinder, you can get out here and tube your front end in probably a weekend. Seriously, if the engine's already out of the car. You guys that like the big horsepower, this is the platform to do it on. There again, I go back to like the Miata. I mean, yes, people throw a lot of horsepower at those cars, and you can fabricate a lot of stuff, and there are some parts available, sure. But you're not gonna find a car that accepts different engines, different setups, different brakes, different rear ends. You can completely change this thing to whatever you want to. These cars are blank canvases. Throw all the power that you want to at it. Buy the right parts though, and you'll be good to go. So I just wanted to come out here and give you guys some love that like big horsepower. Even though I'm not necessarily on that end of the spectrum anymore, I still do like about a 500 to 600 horsepower car on the street. And I guess for a lot of you, yeah, that's still big horsepower. But there's nothing wrong with it. Make the horsepower you want to make. Enjoy your Fox body. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.